The timeline of Israelite history given to us in the Bible does not match the recorded history of other ancient cultures, which has led academia to dismiss the account of how Israel became a nation as a work of fiction. In this video, I am going to demonstrate that the historical account that the Bible gives us concerning the Israelites is genuine, and we can do this by examining the account the Bible gives us concerning Joshua. He is a very special case, as if we were to take his account at face value, then he is the only Israelite to have lived through slavery in Egypt, the Exodus, 40 years in the wilderness, and the conquest of Canaan. So there is a lot that we could look for archaeologically that would all be happening at around the same time, that is to say within the lifespan of one man. The Bible also gives us a calendar date of the Exodus when Joshua would have been alive. And it came to pass in the 480th year, after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. So if we take this verse at face value, it would place the Exodus at circa 1446 BC, and Joshua's conquest 40 years later in 1406 BC. Also, I brought you up from the land of Egypt, and led you 40 years through the wilderness, to possess the land of the Amorites. Now I'm going to jump to 1 Kings chapter 16 and 34. In his days did Hiel the Bethelite build Jericho. He laid the foundation thereof in Abiram his firstborn, and set up the gates thereof in his youngest son Segub, according to the word of the Lord which he spake by Joshua the son of Nun. So Hiel has just rebuilt the town at Jericho, archaeologically recognized as the Iron Age 1B town at Tel Es-Sultan. And the author is letting us know that there has not been a town standing at Jericho since Joshua's conquest. This Iron Age 1B town that Hiel built can be dated to the time of Ahab, who is dated from circa 873 to 852 BC. So it is a matter of archaeological fact that the last standing town at Jericho was Jericho City 4 of the Middle Bronze Age 2B period. There is no way to get around this fact. Prior to the Iron Age 1B town, archaeological excavations undertaken by Garstang, Kenyan and Negro have shown Jericho has not had a town standing at this site since the Middle Bronze Age 2B city's destruction when the walls fell and the town subsequently burned, just as we know from Joshua chapter 6 verses 20 and 24. So the people shouted when the priests blew with the trumpets, and it came to pass, when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. And they burnt the city with fire, and all that was therein, only the silver and the gold, and the vessels of brass and of iron, they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. And I'll just read Joshua's curse as well. And Joshua adjured them at that time, saying, Cursed be the man before the Lord, that riseth up and buildeth this city Jericho. He shall lay the foundation thereof in his firstborn, and in his youngest son shall he set up the gates of it. So it's quite clear from the authors of the book of Kings that they are confirming that we need to concern ourselves with this Middle Bronze Age city, despite the fact they didn't give us a calendar date to go by. Also, we provided one more clue that Joshua was responsible for the destruction of Jericho City 4 due to a scarab that was found in tomb H13 dated to the time of the city's destruction. The scarab belonged to the early Hyksos king Sheshi. The Bible refers to this king as Sheshai, one of the Anakim that Joshua had Caleb drive out from Hebron. And unto Caleb the son of Jephunneh he gave a part among the children of Judah, according to the commandment of the Lord to Joshua, even the city of Arba, the father of Anak, which city is Hebron. And Caleb drove thence the 3 sons of Anak, Sheshai and Ahiman and Talmai, the children of Anak. This is backed up by Aaron Kempinski, a leading Middle Bronze Age archaeologist, only he believes that the biblical account of Sheshai is a work of fiction based on the actual exploits of the Sheshi who was active in the Egyptian Delta as well as in Sharuin. This would be a natural conclusion to draw without understanding the error in Egyptian chronology that led to this 300-year discrepancy that we find between the Bible and Egypt's dating of Sheshai. This was what also led archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon to come to the conclusion that the Israelite conquest never happened, as within the conventional chronology of circa 1406 BC, there was no town to be found at Jericho, with City 4 being the last town in Jericho prior to the Iron Age 1B town. I will address this discrepancy later, but I want to build on the evidence that we have that Joshua was active at this time period during the Middle Bronze Age. The climax of Joshua's conquest in Canaan results in the killing of Jabin, the king of Hatzor. And Joshua at that time turned back and took Hatzor, and smote the king thereof with the sword. For Hatzor before time was the head of all those kingdoms. And they smote all the souls that were therein with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them. There was not any left to breathe, and he burnt Hatzor with fire. Kenyon once again synchronized the destruction at Jericho with the burning of the Middle Bronze Age 2B city of Tel El-Qada, which we know as Hatzor, to the same time period based on pottery analysis. At this level we find Akkadian tablets addressed to Imni, the king of Hatzor, which is the Canaanite form of the name Jabin. This places another biblical figure from Joshua's account active at around the destruction of Jericho City 4 in the Middle Bronze Age 2B era. So now let's go back to earlier in Joshua's life, to slavery in Egypt. In the Middle Bronze Age 2A period, we have evidence of the enslavement of Western Semitic people in the form of the Brooklyn Papyrus found on a Theban estate during the reign of Sobek-Hotep III of the 13th dynasty. This is important as it shows when in Egyptian history we should be looking for evidence of the Israelites. Many names featured on the papyrus we know from the Bible. Shiphrah, Asher, Menahem, and Issachar is mentioned 4 times. Each name on the papyrus lists the Semitic name first, then gives the prenomen of Zatinaf, followed by their Egyptian name. This is how we are able to identify Joseph in Egyptian history using his Egyptian name given in Genesis chapter 41 verse 45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paaneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Joseph went out all over the land of Egypt. I made a video on Joseph's name recently that you should check out after watching this video. Then, at the Middle Bronze Age 2 AB transition, we have archaeological evidence that the Western Semitic population at Tel Ed-Daba had abandoned the site after what was described by excavators as a possible plague that affected the region. This is biblical Goshen, the homeland of the Israelites during their time in Egypt, and we know of the 10 plagues that affected the Egyptians before Israel were allowed to leave. I will do a detailed video of what occurred archaeologically at Tel Ed-Daba in the future, but I want to stay on topic for this video. At the same time as the Semitic population at Tel Ed-Daba had abandoned their homes towards the end of the 13th dynasty, the Semitic population at Kahun in Fayum had also abandoned their town as well. This is what we would expect to find in the archaeological record when looking for an exodus of the Israelites along with a mixed multitude. It's my opinion that stops at Succoth and Ephraim were made when leaving Goshen in order to facilitate other slaves joining them from places like Pithom and Kahun. We also have an external account from the Egyptian priest Manetho, which pretty much confirms that this is happening at the end of the 13th dynasty, as he gives a description of what happens prior to the Hyksos invasion. He said that it was during the reign of Thutmose that God had smote the Egyptians, which then would allow for the invaders of an obscure race, which are the Hyksos, to take control of Egypt without any resistance. Thutmose is the Greek spelling of the pharaoh that was named Dudimos, one of the last kings of the 13th dynasty. So while Manetho is an external source, Dudimos becomes the third named person, being the pharaoh of the Exodus, which the biblical account tells us would have been alive during the lifespan of Joshua. And notice how Manetho's account backs up the biblical account that the Egyptian army was destroyed in the Red Sea. Only by the Egyptians being without an army would the early Hyksos kings have been able to invade Egypt uncontested. This would include Sheshi, who the Bible also gives an account of. I could go on to show a lot more evidence to back up my claims, but I want to keep the video short, and we can't ignore the fact that the Bible is telling us that this is all taking place at around 1446 BC, and not earlier in history as the conventional timeline informs us. To give a brief explanation, we have to understand that all ancient cultures and historical dates rely on synchronization with the Egyptian timeline. The Bible is not exempt from this. The Egyptian timeline has been erroneously extended by 300 years due to errors in calculating the length of the third intermediate period of Egypt. However, there is one event within the lifespan of Joshua not beholden to Egyptian chronology, as it documents an astronomical event. In Joshua chapter 10, I have made the claim that he witnessed the solar eclipse whilst fighting the Amorite kings at Gibeon. With astro-retro calculations, we were able to find out if an eclipse could be seen from Gibeon at the time of the biblical date given for the conquest, and on the 14th of July 1406 BC, this is exactly what had occurred. I did a video that you should check out for more details, but this interpretation might not be able to convince everyone. So what I think might be best to do is to end this video here and come back with a part 2. As what I want to do next is put down the Bible and demonstrate this 300-year shift across other cultures in the ancient world. Right now, this interpretation of Israelite history is easy to dismiss, as I'm effectively introducing an even earlier Exodus date theory, which I can assure you is not what I'm trying to do. My insistence in sticking with the biblical dates will be easier to understand as I go through other ancient cultures showing exactly the same discrepancies that I have shown here. I'm at least hoping that by the end of the next video, even if you are still opposed to both my interpretation of the biblical text and my understanding of ancient chronology, then you will at least have to concede that for some reason, when we take the Bible dates at face value, we are able to show archaeological evidence that meets the criteria of the biblical account of the Israelites during their time in Egypt right up to the United Monarchy period of Israel. And all we need do is look 300 years earlier each time. That alone should cause you to question why that is. Anyway, please like the video and share it with anyone you feel needs to hear this, and I'll see you in part 2. All praises to the Most High.